A perfect TV family, watched by millions every week. Smiling faces, happy stories, and a house that felt like a dream. But what if I told you that behind this perfect image, every single person in that family lived a completely different real life? Some lost their identity after fame. Some struggled in silence for years. And some carried stories that only came out decades later. Because when you look back today, you realize something shocking. The most loved family on television was not as perfect as it looked on screen. Chapter 1. Susan Olsen as Cindy Brady. Susan Olsen was just a kid when she walked into one of the most famous TV families in history. But there is one detail people never forget about her start, and it still surprises even her own castmates. She was only 7 years old when she got cast as Cindy Brady, and the story behind it is almost unbelievable. She had a small speech quirk, a lisp that made her sound different from other child actors. Most people thought it would hold her back. But the creator of the show, Sherwood Schwartz, actually laughed when he heard it and hired her on the spot. That one moment changed her entire life. On screen, Cindy Brady looked like the perfect little girl from a perfect TV family. But behind the scenes, things were not as simple as they looked. Susan Olsen later admitted something very honest. She never fully felt like she belonged to the Brady world. She liked her real life more than the fictional one. And even as the show became a global hit, she was still just a kid trying to understand fame. After the show ended, life did not turn into a fairy tale. She moved into different paths: graphic design, radio hosting, and creative work. But the Cindy Brady image never really left her. Then came a darker chapter that most fans do not expect. In the early 1990s, she faced legal trouble after 2 DUI arrests. She spent time in an education program, something she has spoken about openly. It was not a perfect story, but it was real. And maybe that is the strange part of her life, because Cindy Brady was supposed to be perfect. But Susan Olsen was not trying to be perfect. She was just trying to move forward. Today, in 2026, she is not chasing fame anymore. She is working with kids, teaching acting in California. And in a strange way, that feels like the most Cindy Brady ending possible. A childhood star finding her way back to children again. Chapter 2. Mike Lookinland as Bobby Brady. Mike Lookinland was the youngest boy in the Brady family. And on screen, he played Bobby Brady, the energetic kid who always got into trouble. But his real-life story takes a very different turn. He was only 8 years old when the show began. Imagine that, a child suddenly becoming part of one of America's most famous TV families overnight. At first, everything looked like a dream. But when the show ended, reality hit differently. He was still very young, but the Hollywood doors did not stay open for him. The Brady name followed him everywhere, but did not always help him. There was a long period where acting work became difficult to find, and slowly, he started stepping away from the spotlight. But the most shocking moment in his life came years later. In 1997, he was involved in a serious car accident on a Utah highway. He lost control of the vehicle and it rolled over. He survived, but the situation revealed something deeper. His blood alcohol level was extremely high at the time. It led to an arrest and a turning point in his life. That moment became a breaking point. After that, he chose a completely different direction. He left acting behind and moved into behind-the-scenes work in film production. Later, he even stepped into construction and business. He founded a company called Just Add Water Custom Concrete in Utah. A surprising shift from child actor to building things with his own hands. Not lights, not cameras, but real physical work. And that is where his story becomes interesting. Because for someone who once lived inside a famous TV house, he ended up building real houses in real life. In 2019, during a Brady reunion special, he even showed his concrete work at the original set location. It felt like a full circle moment. Today, in 2026, Mike Lookinland lives a quiet life. No spotlight chasing, no Hollywood pressure, just a man who left fame behind and built something more grounded instead. Chapter 3: Christopher Knight as Peter Brady. Christopher Knight entered the Brady world with experience already behind him. He had done commercials for major brands like Cheerios, Toyota, and Tide before he even became Peter Brady. So when he joined the show at age 11, he was already familiar with cameras. But Peter Brady became something much bigger than just another role. He was the middle son, stuck between two personalities. Not the coolest, not the youngest, just in between. And that in-between identity followed Christopher Knight for years. After the show ended, something strange happened. Audition after audition, he kept getting the same response. Either he looked too much like Peter Brady, or he was only offered roles that mocked Peter Brady. So slowly, he made a decision. He stepped away from acting and entered a completely different world: technology and business. He co-founded a software company and later built successful ventures in the tech space. This is where his story shifts from child actor to entrepreneur. But his public life did not end there. Years later, he reappeared in a very unexpected way. A reality TV series followed his marriage to model Adrienne Curry. It showed a very different side of him, far from Peter Brady. Their relationship became a public story. They got married and later divorced after several years. Another chapter closed. But unlike many child stars, he did not stay stuck in the past. He rebuilt again. In 2016, he entered a stable marriage and later launched a furniture brand under his name. A real business identity, separate from his TV past. And today, in 2026, he co-hosts a podcast with his former castmate Barry Williams. From child actor to tech entrepreneur to media voice again. But this time, on his own terms. Chapter 4: Eve Plum as Jan Brady. There is one line from the Brady Bunch that somehow became bigger than the entire show itself. Marsha, Marsha, Marsha. But here is the strange truth. It was only said once. Just a single moment from a single episode. And it ended up defining an entire character's legacy forever. That character was Jan Brady, played by Eve Plum. She was the middle daughter in the family, and that middle position shaped almost everything about her story. She was 11 years old when she joined the show. At the time, it looked like a simple acting job. But after the show ended, Eve Plum took a very different path compared to many child actors. She did not chase constant fame. She did not stay locked into the Brady image. Instead, she slowly built a career that moved away from it. She kept acting, but also expanded into something unexpected: painting. Yes, she became a serious visual artist. Her artwork started appearing in galleries across the United States. And while most people still remembered her as Jan Brady, she was quietly building a second identity in real life. There is also a financial moment in her story that stands out. She sold a Malibu property she bought as a child for $55,000 and later sold it for millions decades later. A decision that turned into one of the smartest financial moves among the entire cast. But what makes her story interesting is not just money or acting. It is balance. She did not collapse under fame, and she did not completely run from it either. She simply stepped sideways into a different life. Today, in 2026, Eve Plum lives a quiet but stable life, acting, painting, and occasionally returning to TV roles. Not chasing nostalgia, but not escaping it either. Just living between both worlds. Chapter 5. Barry Williams as Greg Brady. Some people leave a role behind. Barry Williams never really did. Because for him, Greg Brady was not just a character. It became a lifelong identity. He was 14 years old when he became Greg Brady. The oldest brother, the cool one, the leader of the group. And that image stuck with him for decades. After the show ended, something very clear happened. He could not escape Greg Brady. Everywhere he went, the same identity followed him. So instead of fighting it forever, he made a different choice. Forever? He made a different choice. He leaned into it. He wrote books about it. He appeared in reality shows. He joined reunion projects. He even competed on dance reality TV shows. It was like he turned one role into an entire career strategy. But there was another side to his journey: stage performance. He moved into musical theater to expand beyond television. Performing in live productions gave him something different, something more immediate and real. Still, Greg Brady never left his shadow. In his personal life, he went through multiple marriages before finding stability later in life. And over time, something shifted. What used to feel like typecasting slowly became acceptance. Today, he co-hosts a podcast revisiting the Brady Bunch with Christopher Knight, talking about the same world from a grown perspective. Not trapped in it anymore, but not disconnected either. In 2026, Barry Williams is in his 70s, and in a strange way, he has made peace with the fact that Greg Brady will always be part of him. Not a burden anymore. Just history. Chapter 6. Maureen McCormick as Marsha Brady. Marsha Brady was the image of perfection. Perfect hair, perfect smile, perfect life. At least, that is what everyone believed. But for Maureen McCormick, that image became something very different. A pressure she could not escape. She was 13 when she became Marsha Brady. And from the outside, it looked like everything was going perfectly. But behind the scenes, life was becoming unstable. After the show ended, things did not move in a straight line. She struggled with addiction, depression, and personal challenges that were far from the polished image people expected. At one point, she openly admitted she was dealing with cocaine addiction. There were periods where her life completely spiraled out of control. Auditions were lost. Opportunities disappeared. Hollywood slowly stepped away from her. There was even a moment in her life where she reached a breaking point emotionally, standing on the edge of despair. But her story does not end there, because slowly she began rebuilding. With the support of her husband Michael Cummings, she started recovery. It was not instant. It was not clean. It took years. But she came back. She wrote a memoir that became a bestseller, sharing her full story without hiding the darker parts. And eventually, she returned to the Brady world for reunion projects, not as Marsha Brady from a perfect family, but as someone who survived the pressure of being perfect. Today, in 2026, Maureen McCormick lives a more stable life. Still acting sometimes, still appearing in public, still connected to fans. But her real story is not about fame. It is about coming back after losing everything that fame promised. Chapter 7. Florence Henderson as Carol Brady. There was something almost unreal about Carol Brady. A mother on television who seemed too perfect to be real. Calm, patient, always smiling no matter what chaos was happening around her. But what most viewers never realized is that perfection was coming from a very real place of struggle. Florence Henderson was not just playing a mother. She was building the version of a mother she never truly had growing up. Born into a large family, in difficult financial conditions, she learned early what it meant to grow up without stability. And maybe that is why Carol Brady felt so natural on screen. Because it was not acting in the usual sense, it was emotional translation. But behind that warm television image, her real life moved through very different phases. She went through marriages, personal loss, and long periods of rebuilding her private world. And yet, through all of it, one thing never changed. She showed up. Even in her later years, she was still connected to her TV family in a way that surprised people. There is a moment that says everything about her character. Just days before her passing, she was present around the people from the show. Not for attention, not for publicity, just support. That small detail tells the real story. Carol Brady was written as the perfect mother, but Florence Henderson became something deeper than that. Someone who stayed emotionally present, even when life was not easy behind the scenes. Today, her legacy is not just a role. It is the feeling people remember when they think of comfort, warmth, and family on television. Chapter 8. Robert Reed as Mike Brady. Robert Reed was the kind of actor who was never fully comfortable inside the world that made him famous. On screen, he was the ideal father, calm, responsible, always holding the family together. But off-screen, he was something very different. Before television ever found him, Robert Reed was already a serious Shakespeare-trained actor. Theater was his world. Discipline, depth, and dramatic performance defined him. So when he was cast in a light family sitcom, it created tension from the very beginning. He often disagreed with scripts. He questioned scenes. And behind the scenes, he struggled with the direction of the show. But here is the strange part. Even with all that conflict, he never walked away. Every week, he showed up. And every week, he delivered a performance that made millions believe he was the perfect TV father. A man who didn't fully accept the role, yet became the most believable part of it. But there was another layer to his life that stayed hidden for years. In that era, certain truths could not be spoken openly in Hollywood. So much of his personal life remained private, carefully protected from the public eye. That silence created pressure that followed him for years. People who worked with him described him as intelligent, intense, and often emotionally distant. But even with everything happening behind the scenes, he remained connected to the show in his own way. He attended reunions when he could. He stayed in contact with the cast. And to the audience, he was still Mike Brady. In his final years, he stepped away from Hollywood completely and focused on teaching and quieter work. Far from cameras, far from pressure. And when his life ended, it left behind a strange contrast. A man who created one of the most iconic TV fathers in history, but never fully felt at peace inside that role. Robert Reed's story is not just about fame. It is about pressure, silence, and a life lived between two worlds. A man who helped create one of the most iconic TV fathers ever, but never fully felt at peace inside that role. And maybe that is what makes this story so powerful. Because sometimes, the people who look the most perfect on screen are carrying the heaviest truths behind it. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Screen Rewind for more hidden cast stories, then and now journeys, and untold Hollywood secrets.